General Hospital spoilers tease that one of the most quietly emerging yet increasingly influential developments is the series of increasingly delusional fantasies Jocelyn is constructing about her own future. No longer just a young woman swept up in the chaos of family upheaval or personal relationships. Jocelyn now sees herself as a central figure, a key player in the strategic operations of the WSB organization. She believes she can control the narrative, command her destiny, and make decisions with global impact. However, this delusion is gradually pulling her into a dangerous zone she's unaware of. She is beginning to lose sight of the line between ideals and reality, between duty and emotion, between power and sacrifice. What's even more alarming is that, while she's busy redesigning her future around control and influence, the evolving dynamics of her relationship with Vaughn are quietly but dangerously spiraling out of control. The bond between Jocelyn and Vaughn, originally a straightforward collaboration between a subordinate and her supervisor, has swiftly evolved into a more complicated connection, tangled with emotion, trust, doubt, and a yearning for recognition. Vaughn, typically composed and professionally distant, finds himself increasingly caught up in the unpredictable waves Jocelyn creates. Her boldness and decisiveness not only surprise him but also force him to reassess how he oversees and coordinates with her. Jocelyn is no longer following orders like a disciplined operative. She's forging her own path, making unfounded assumptions, and even attempting to manipulate the organization's operations to align with her personal views and speculative projections. Tactical adjustments originally meant to support her mission are now becoming emergency responses. As Vaughn and the entire system scramble to contain the fallout from her impulsive and unchecked decisions, the situation becomes more severe as Vaughn struggles to distinguish between WSB strategy and Jocelyn's personal impositions. Each of their interactions carries an undercurrent of unspoken emotion and information that profoundly influences their decisions and actions. Vaughn, once the impartial observer, is being drawn into Jocelyn's sphere of influence, increasingly relying on emotion rather than objectivity in assessing her behavior. Secret meetings, off-the-record conversations, meaningful glances, and decisions based on vague trust rather than clear facts are weaving a tangled web that's becoming impossible to unravel. Vaughn hesitates to sever ties for fear of hurting Jocelyn, yet he can't continue compromising plans to accommodate someone growing ever more emotional and personally obsessed. This ambiguity is beginning to cause systemic ripples. Internal reports are becoming inconsistent, sudden changes in directives are raising red flags, and suspicions from higher authorities are surfacing. Vaughn stands at a crossroads, either protect Jocelyn and continue making quiet adjustments to avoid drawing attention, or issue a formal warning that could sever their personal connection and endanger the mission. But both choices promise conflict, and both threaten to dismantle everything they've built together. Meanwhile, Jocelyn remains unaware that she herself is becoming the greatest risk to the mission she once swore to complete. She believes she's thinking ahead, acting for a greater purpose. But in reality, she's allowing emotions to guide her, letting her obsession with control and self-affirmation overshadow every professional standard. She believes Vaughn is the only one who understands and supports her, but doesn't see how that very trust is cornering Vaughn into an impossible position. Every reckless move she makes forces Vaughn to recalibrate, and every adjustment he makes sets off a chain of further consequences throughout the mission's infrastructure. What once seemed like a promising journey into her future is now turning darker, into a power game she's not experienced enough to handle, a complicated relationship impacting everyone around them, and a rising tide of strategic shifts made only to prevent her from tearing everything apart. And when those adjustments finally reach their limit, will Vaughn have the courage to bring Jocelyn back to reality? Or will he be the one consumed, lost in the maze of ambition and illusion Jocelyn is unknowingly crafting? The ongoing war between Carly and Nina is also evolving, from a personal feud into a widespread force of influence, causing psychological, social, and strategic ripples across the lives of everyone around them. And the one most directly affected right now is Jocelyn. The escalating conflict between the two women no longer stems solely from old grudges or unresolved emotional wounds. It has grown into a full-blown power struggle, where each side fights to assert dominance, define their role, and wield close personal relationships as tools to serve their own goals. Jocelyn, Carly's daughter, who's had her own tensions with Nina, is now caught at the eye of this storm of layered pain and silent calculations. She's being forced to make a series of deeply conflicting choices while still juggling top-secret tasks assigned by the WSB. Her unique position is making one shift in particular increasingly clear: Jocelyn is losing the ability to remain on the sidelines. She is becoming an inseparable part of the conflict itself. No longer just a witness to the tension between Carly and Nina, she's being pulled in deeper with every new fracture between the two women. She bears the pressure of preserving her mother's image in Michael's eyes while trying not to ruin what little remains of her fragile bond with Willow. Jocelyn can no longer afford to be neutral or simply a silent family member. She must choose sides, and every choice brings unpredictable fallout. Yet the drama between Carly and Nina is only one part of a broader picture. A more troubling shift is emerging in a new confrontation between Jocelyn and Willow, once sisters-in-law and allies. Now unwitting opponents in a battle neither wanted but neither can escape. The nurses' ball, intended as a celebration of unity and compassion, instead becomes the stage where long-suppressed tensions between the two explode. No more kindness. No more gentle words. Their true selves surface, unhealed wounds and unresolved conflicts laid bare. Jocelyn, always siding with Michael, doesn't hesitate to voice her belief that Willow lacks the strength to endure the family's pressures. In turn, Willow feels deeply betrayed by someone she once saw as family, especially in her time of emotional need. Harsh words, cold stares, and blunt accusations turn their clash into one of the most dramatic highlights of Nurses' Ball week. From that confrontation, another shift takes place in Jocelyn's narrative, not just an emotional shift, but a turning point in her character development. No longer merely a young person swept up in adult chaos. Jocelyn is now emerging as a distinct force, someone with real influence over the bigger picture. Her interactions with Carly, Nina, Willow, Michael, and Vaughn are triggering a cascade of reactions in which Jocelyn is no longer the weakest link. She's the one reshaping the game, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes by design. Every action she takes leads to new strategic recalibrations within the Corinthos family, among the core characters' relationships, and even within how the WSB views her. The secrets she holds, the emotions she suppresses, and the choices she makes, right or wrong, are bringing the entire narrative to life with volatility and unpredictability. Jocelyn's storyline is no longer a side arc in General Hospital, it's exploding outward, breaking free from the traditional boundaries of family drama and social intrigue. She is now a strategic epicenter, a character no force, be it family, rival, or institution, can afford to ignore. Through the wars between Carly and Nina and the collisions with Willow, Jocelyn is being forged into a real player in the complex game of Port Charles. And the most unsettling truth? Not even Jocelyn herself can say for sure whether her next move will set things right, or plunge everything into a crisis unlike anything seen before. But one thing is certain: every new adjustment, every new development on the horizon, will have her name written all over it. Jocelyn is entering a pivotal phase in her complex personal journey, a stage where she is forced to take decisive, defining actions to regain control that's steadily slipping away. This is no longer a time to step back or wait for others to decide her fate. Jocelyn understands that she must re-establish her boundaries, reassess her relationships, and redirect her path before everything spirals beyond repair. However, just as she begins crafting a new, stable strategy for the future, a silent shock emerges. The integrity of her identity as a WSB agent begins to fracture. The very qualities that once formed her protective cover, her intelligence, quick thinking, and disciplined mindset, are now under scrutiny. Not only by her supervisors at the agency but also by her loved ones, who have no idea about the secret world she operates in. The truth that Jocelyn remains an undercover operative, meticulously trained to work from the shadows, is now driving irreversible strategic changes. To the WSB, she is no longer seen as a dependable asset but a growing liability, as her personal emotions increasingly collide with national duty in every decision she makes. The organization is recalculating how to manage her, reworking information systems, and even preparing contingency plans in case she crosses the line. These adjustments, though silent, are being made at the highest level, and they're serious. The organization's shifting perception of Jocelyn, from a secure asset to a potentially unstable variable, is triggering a series of complications, both within the agency and in her personal life. But while systems can calculate risks with data and strategy, Jocelyn is facing a different kind of crisis, a crisis called family. Specifically, the increasingly unstable relationship between Carly and Sunny, the two emotional anchors of her life, has become a source of relentless psychological tension. Carly, driven by protective instincts, is constantly pulling Jocelyn back toward safety. But in doing so, she applies pressure, probing into her relationship with Vaughn and interfering in personal decisions. Sunny, once the embodiment of strength and reliability, is now faltering under conflicting personal choices, causing his image as a dependable father figure in Jocelyn's eyes to slowly crumble. She is caught in a constant internal tug-of-war, where the values she once relied on have either been shattered or turned upside down. How can she stay loyal to her mission when her loved ones doubt her? How can she protect herself without betraying her family? And how can she assert her own agency without destroying what's left of her familial bonds? These questions replay endlessly in her mind, dragging her into a sea of contradictions that no one but herself can rescue her from. And the more she fights, the more she realizes the problem isn't just isolated conflicts, it's an entire system of trust collapsing around her. From the WSB to the Corinthos family, from Vaughn to Willow, from Carly to Sunny, all of it is unraveling, leaving Jocelyn directionless. At this chaotic juncture, Jocelyn's story ceases to be just a journey of self-discovery. It becomes a vivid case study in how a young person copes with layered crises, of identity, trust, role, and emotions. Every adjustment from the agency, every careless word from a loved one, every doubtful glance from Vaughn or Willow feels like a piercing needle through the armor she's struggling to maintain. When all of these elements clash and intertwine moment by moment, Jocelyn realizes she is no longer a supporting character watching from behind the scenes. She is now the epicenter of an unraveling plot, filled with unresolved twists and impossible choices. This transformation is what makes her arc one of the most unpredictable, dangerous, and compelling in the current landscape of Port Charles. Jocelyn now stands at a critical crossroads, where silence or hesitation could lead to devastating consequences. She can no longer maintain the fragile balance between fractured disguises and the conflicting roles she's burdened with. She is forced to take bold new actions, not just to protect her current standing, but to reshape the entire path that lies ahead. But before she can act, an even greater shock strikes, a chain reaction no one could have foreseen. And this shock doesn't come from an enemy or an uncontrollable external threat, it comes from deep within herself. A new, dark, inexplicable obsession begins to take hold. A compulsive hunger for control, recognition, and dominance is quietly but thoroughly dismantling the moral, strategic, and emotional lines inside Jocelyn. She no longer thinks like an agent or a loyal daughter. She's being pulled into a fragile psychological space, where reason is distorted by delusional expectations and unnamed pressures. This is triggering a dangerous shift in how she responds to the world around her. From closely analyzing Vaughn's every move to identify weaknesses, to obsessively watching Carly and Sunny for signs of deception, Jocelyn is no longer driven by clear goals. Her motivations are increasingly fueled by fear of exposure and a desperate sense of losing control. From the outside, her actions may seem reckless or irrational. But beneath the surface, they reflect a deeper, more alarming transformation, a psychological adjustment where Jocelyn is no longer accepting reality, but attempting to rewrite it. She begins to distrust everyone, even herself. Carly and Sunny, once her emotional anchors, are now under constant internal scrutiny. Vaughn, the only one who knows her true identity within the WSB, no longer enjoys her full trust. Instead, she attempts to decode, manipulate, and control every interaction, as if anyone could be a traitor in a game whose rules she no longer fully understands. This growing obsession isn't just a passing psychological phase, it marks a profound shift in her cognitive and behavioral framework. Jocelyn is no longer acting for duty, love, or honor. She's acting out of a consuming fear of losing control, a fear that's colonizing her every thought. Those around her are beginning to notice the change. But no one is close enough to see that what they're witnessing isn't just pressure, it's a full-blown identity crisis approaching its peak. The true danger lies not in what Jocelyn has already done, but in what she is about to do, actions that no longer align with reason or morality, but are led by a warped logic where striking first feels like the only way to survive. This mindset is transforming her from a promising character into a potential threat, to the WSB, which is rapidly losing patience with her, and to the Corinthos family, where every relationship is visibly deteriorating. Thus, one of the most dangerous developments is escalating, not just in her behavior, but in her entire psychological system. As the lines blur between real and fake, trust and betrayal, logic and emotion, Jocelyn is entering a mental state where any decision she makes could bring everything crashing down. Every shock, every obsession, every adjustment is building up like a ticking time bomb. And when it finally explodes, Jocelyn will no longer be a victim of her circumstances, she will be the epicenter of a new wave of chaos, the consequences of which no one can predict. Jocelyn is at a critical juncture where every choice can lead to a collapse or a turning point with no return. She is no longer a young woman who only cares about her studies or her family, but has become part of the power game and hidden relationships of the WSB organization, where every mistake is paid for with blood, career, and sometimes identity. Therefore, she is forced to make a new adjustment, a decisive turn to regain the initiative in the vortex that is tightening around her every day. But just when she needs to be clear-headed and strategic, Jocelyn is being pulled into a new series of crazy stories, where the line between mission and personal feelings is no longer clear, especially with Vaughn. The relationship between Jocelyn and Vaughn, which started out as serious and professional, is now sliding into obsessive and dangerously deviant. Their conversations are becoming more personal than strategic. The lingering glances, the unannounced encounters, the seemingly accidental but calculated touches, all of it is creating a suffocating atmosphere where no one knows who is controlling whom. Vaughn, who was once entrusted with Jocelyn's supervision and protection, is now being drawn into nameless, ambiguous emotions, and Jocelyn, while pretending to be in control, is losing herself in a psychological game she thinks she is smart enough to win. Their new obsession is not simply lust or romantic curiosity, but a need to control each other. Jocelyn needs Vaughn close to feel safe, but she can't stand being so closely monitored. Vaughn wants to protect Jocelyn, but he can't deny that the young woman holds something that unsettles him, a soft but dangerous power hidden in her stubborn eyes and unpredictable determination. It's all part of a new, increasingly crazy mess, where rules are broken, boundaries are pushed, and each passing day only makes Jocelyn's future more uncertain than ever. But the story doesn't end there. Just as things are on the brink of explosion, a name that was thought to have been buried in the past suddenly appears in the news. Jax, Jocelyn's biological father, may be returning to Port Charles. And if that happens, the delicate balance Jocelyn is trying to maintain will collapse. Jax is not someone to be manipulated or fooled. As a father who has seen Carly cause so much chaos in his daughter's life, he will not stand idly by as Jocelyn slides into a reality of conflict between her personal identity and her national duty. Jax's return is not just a variable, it is a potential disaster, capable of blowing away every layer of cover Jocelyn has worked so hard to build. Jax will ask questions. Jax will investigate. Jax will not accept half-truths. He will see through Vaughn, through the ambiguous relationship between his daughter and a man who is trying to hide the real dangers. And most of all, Jax will demand the truth, something Jocelyn, at this point, is not ready to face. If Jax finds out about her role in the WSB, finds out about what she's done, who she's manipulated, the dangers she's faced without warning, he'll be furious, not because he's been betrayed, but because he knows his daughter is being hurt and no one is standing up for her. And when a father like Jax gets angry, no organization, no Vaughn, no Carly, no Sonny can stop the fallout. Jocelyn is like a ticking clock. The crazy stories she and Vaughn are getting into. The uncontrollable obsessions, the increasingly twisted inner adjustments, and the shadow of a father returning from the past, all of it is creating a disaster waiting to explode. And when all of those elements converge at one point, no one can predict what will happen. But one thing is certain, Jocelyn's life will never be the same again. And when the dust settles, what remains is a girl forced to face harsh choices, not to protect a secret, but to protect herself from total collapse.